Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Jimmy Dore Show. We have a special guest with us on the phone. He is an Army veteran, cancer survivor, and a union iron worker, and now he's running for Congress in Wisconsin's 1st District against none other than, you guessed it, Paul Ryan. It's Randy Bryce is here, the Iron Stache. Hey, Randy, thanks for being here.
Hey, Jimmy, how you doing? Thanks for the invitation.
Oh, I'm doing okay. As best you can living under a blanket of neoliberalism. But listen, now you and I come from the same kind of background. I'm a blue-collar guy. My dad was a cop. My grandpa was a cop. I was a bricklayer.
Nice.
And so you're a union.
Nice.
Yeah, so we know what it's like, right, to worry about having enough to eat and having a roof over our heads. And now,
absolutely.
So I ask everybody here at the Jimmy Dore Show, we talk about Donald Trump being a symptom of a bigger problem. Donald Trump is a problem, but he's a symptom of a bigger one. Do you share that sentiment?
I do. And the thing is like, look who people like him are helping out. They're helping continue this corporate-based economy that we have and totally ignoring the worker-based economy that we need for everybody to be successful. I mean, and as tradespeople, we understand that when work is plentiful, we have a lot of money in our pockets, and we go out and we can spend that money, and create a demand for more products.
So you sound like an FDR New Deal Democrat, a demand economy. You put money in the pockets of workers, they spend it, they create a demand in the economy. Unlike Republicans, who want to give all the money to rich people, and then hopefully it will trickle down, sir. Some of it will trickle. So that's kind of sounds like where you're coming from, right?
No, absolutely. And I mean, we've seen, when Reagan first tried this trickle-down experiment, we saw that it hasn't done anything for us. The income inequality is just blown up. People like us have less and less, and we're working twice as hard just to keep what we had.
So what would you say is the bigger problem that gave us Trump? Is it corporatism, or what would you say gave us Trump?
I would say overall corporatism, and we let our message get away. We need to hold people that are elected who want to hold the title representative on our behalf. We have to hold their feet closer to the fire. And when things start going away from us and things are more difficult for us just to make it, it's time to make a change. And it seemed almost like a perfect storm was what brought Donald Trump into the White House. It was a lack of enthusiasm during the last election. And I think many people thought that there's no way that more people are going to vote for somebody like him, that's going to allow him to get into the White House. And then to see Congress and the Senate just completely enable whatever he's doing. I think that's another thing that just totally blows my mind.
I couldn't agree with you more. Now, the problem is, it seems to me, I've read about you, I've seen you do interviews, and it seems to me you have your head on straight, and you know what the country needs, and that's why I think that's why you backed Bernie in the primary, correct?
Right, I did, and that was one of those situations where the Ironworkers Union, as an international, decided to endorse Hillary, and I remember, I'll never forget, I was working on a job site. It was a high-rise in downtown Milwaukee. And it was my lunch break, and I was eating my lunch, talking with the crew, and I got a phone call. I didn't recognize the number, answered it, and it was somebody from the Bernie Sanders campaign asking me if I'd be interested in speaking at his rally. And here I'm thinking, my first thought is, what kind of presidential candidate calls a working stiff up on a job site and invites him to come speak at their rally? And then I told him, I said, I can do it. I just can't mention that I'm a union iron worker because I was the political coordinator at the time. So I agreed to do it. And then they further went on and asked about, they're like, are there any job actions, any picket lines going on in the area? Because Senator Sanders he was interested in blocking that. And I'm thinking, that just further confirmed that I was picking the guy that is going to stand up for people like me. So I happily went and spoke at his rally. I got called into the principal's office to our union's hall after the fact. But still, it's a decision that I made it was easy to go to sleep at night. And now that he endorsed our campaign, it's great to see him. And now I get to tell him the rest of the story, and it puts a little bit of a smile on his face. But I'm very appreciative of the fact that here, a presidential candidate that wants to walk a picket line if one exists.
So now how is it? Now, we heard that from other Democratic presidents, right? So this is what I really wanted to ask you about, because you're a union guy, and the Democrats have let the unions down over and over. In fact, the labor AFL-CIO tweeted this out. Labor movement helped give Democrats full control of federal government 3 times in the last 4 decades. All 3 times Democrats failed to pass labor law reforms. So when Barack Obama says he's going to put on a comfortable shoe and help those union workers, and then when the Wisconsin teachers are actually in crisis, he turns his back on them. How do you reconcile that with the Democrats who want to get them to vote for you, knowing that the Democratic Party hasn't done anything for unions in 4 decades?
Well, I don't think any state has been hit as hard as Wisconsin have when it comes to union density. And since Scott Walker and these banana Republicans took over, they just proceeded to carve up the state, gerrymander it, make it more difficult for people to vote. When I go to bed, and I remember hearing stuff about the comfortable, wearing comfortable shoes. And I remember being very enthusiastic the first time President Obama ran. He wanted to put forth that Employee Free Choice Act. And I was like, this is something that I can really support. I was disappointed when it didn't happen. And the fact, I think just the fact now that you're seeing a lot of candidates step up that are good representatives of the working class and people that have, struggled to make ends meet on a monthly basis. And I just know from my own perspective where I come from and where I've stood and how hard that my friends and neighbors have gone to Madison and, as we call it, done laps around the Capitol and go to testify on behalf of all this garbage legislation, this anti-worker legislation that are nothing more than blatant political attacks on us. It's just knowing where I come from, my mindset that this is the only way of life that I know is struggling for people and standing up for what's right. And when I win, I plan on making sure that our message is taken to DC.
So when you say our message, you mean you're going to take it to the corporatists in both parties? Or because that seems like you're in a tough position right now because the Democratic Party is backing you because they really want to get rid of Paul Ryan, as everyone does. And you seem like a good candidate. So how do you negotiate that? Where Barack Obama said exactly what you're saying, I'm going to put on a comfortable shoe, I'll be there for you. And then he wasn't there for them. How do you get those people back to the Democratic Party, even though the Democratic Party are the one who passed NAFTA, gutted welfare, repealed Glass-Steagall, expanded the surveillance state, made the Bush tax cuts permanent. Right. So it seems like, to me, those are the things that led us to Trump. And you're going to have to fight your own party. If you get elected, you're going to have to fight your own party to get rid of neoliberalism inside the Democratic Party. Are you prepared to do that?
Yeah, I am. I very much am. Because it's not right that, anybody, especially somebody that busts their rear end day in and day out, feels like they're not cared about, that people aren't listening to them. So yeah, I am. I am very willing to take it to people regardless of party to make sure that we're looked after.
Because right now people see them, the Democrats caving left and right, especially on DACA. And so these promises that the Democrats, so that's what I keep saying, these promises the Democrats make, it's the Democrats that seem to be letting workers down, letting their own constituents down. They won't stand for anybody, and that's because they really stand for their donors, right? Now, you're not taking corporate money, correct?
Correct. We stated very early on that we're not accepting any money from the fossil fuel industry, and we're not taking any money from Wall Street. There's just a report that came out today. 74% of all of our contributions were under $200. We were the top campaign, Republican or Democrat, with the highest percentage of small donor dollars. And that's what we're counting on.
Okay, so what? So it really hurt. Like you, I was enthusiastic, voted for Barack Obama. And the whole Wisconsin teacher thing was really like an arrow in my heart. It was a gut punch. Mm-hmm. And it was hard for me to kind of... So that's... and then after they cheated Bernie I just couldn't bring myself to support Democrats in general like I used to anymore, and I started to started to look towards third parties. Now, what made you decide to stay with the Democrats instead of trying to go third party? Is it strictly pragmatic?
No, the reason I did that was I saw Hillary as our best chance to keep Donald Trump out of getting into the White House. And Bernie was my first choice. And again, for the reasons that I mentioned, you can't turn down somebody that's going to come walk on a picket line. But I was disappointed that Hillary never made one trip to Wisconsin before the general elections. So it was kind of a disappointment. And I get your message that Democrats have a lot of work to do to gain people's trust back. And I'm fully prepared to do that. And that's just based on my experience of, the past 20 years of working in a district and struggling and going through winters where, and you can appreciate that, what it's like to work in the wintertime.
Yes.
Based on weather, where you don't get the 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're lucky for getting a week's worth of 2-hour show-up time.
Yeah. The only thing worse than working in the winter is not working in the winter.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So let me ask you some questions about, you're a veteran, and when you came back, you got a job helping other homeless veterans, correct?
Right.
And so tell me, so now how did that inform you? Like here you are fighting for your country, you come back to your country and your country's not taking care of the people who they give lip service to and send to fight these wars. And how did that make you feel?
Right. You see how somebody goes from hero to zero within the snap of fingers. And it broke my heart. At the time, it was 60% of the homeless population was made up of veterans. And there's no way that homeless and veterans should ever be in the same sentence again. But it was our job to go identify them, and we pulled them off the streets and plugged them into places that had, like veterans resources. We have a really good VA in Milwaukee. And so after we did that, then it freed up resources for the rest of the homeless population. But I'll never forget working with one guy, and he pulled up the back of his shirt, and it looked like somebody poured acid on it. And I was like, "What happened to you?" And he said, "I'm an atomic warrior." And it took everything, and finally lost track of the man. Couldn't keep, he just dropped off the face of the earth. But our mission was to prove that happened as a result of an atomic test. And I had no idea how to go about doing that. But here's a man that served his country honorably and was, turned away. He's living in a homeless shelter, living under bridges. And it broke my heart. And it's knowing too that not only that, but if I didn't have that job, there was a possibility that I could be in their position too. That here I am getting out of the service. And if I didn't have, a means to make a couple of dollars, I could be living underneath that same bridge. So it really hit me hard, and it's been something that I've been very dedicated to ever since, to make sure that somebody's willing to sign the best years of their life away to volunteer in service to the country, that they're not forgotten about when they come back.
So I was down in San Diego doing some appearances down there, and I met some veterans who go to high schools and colleges, and they do anti-recruiting. So they go there and tell them exactly what it's really like. So, which made sense to me why they would do that, right? So they go fight in these wars we really don't have an enemy. We're creating more enemies, and then they come home, and the country doesn't take care of them. So they go and tell kids, "Hey, this is what it's really like." And I was wondering, are you for something like that, or for guys doing things like that and telling kids what it's really like and what it's going to be like for them when they come back?
Well, I definitely think that people need to be told the truth about what's going on, and it's very helpful to see both sides of the situation. I know that the recruiters sure do a great job of painting a rosy picture that not only are we going to save the world by enlisting, but everything's going to be made perfect as a result of it. So I think that's, as a father looking at my son, if he gets old enough, I'm going to let him know what I went through. And I'm going to let him know that there's the other side too, that when he gets out, there are people called homeless veterans. And I'm going to make him think really long and hard. I didn't have that opportunity. My dad was, he was just proud of me. I mean, at the time, though, we didn't have a Donald Trump in the White House. And it was seen as a fairly honorable thing to do. There weren't all the, we didn't make up an excuse to go into Iraq when I served. It was still during the Cold War, towards the end of the Cold War.
Right.
When as a country, we looked forward to knocking walls down instead of building them.
Right. So now, are you? So another theme we talk about on the show here is that the Democrats they're not offering people anything, whereas Trump actually offered stuff to people, even though he was lying, and he's not going to give.
Right.
He's not going to give those people anything. He's not giving people good jobs. He's not giving them anything he said, and he's looking out for the oligarchs like they've always done. So do you have a jobs program? Now, we always say here you can end those foreign wars and invest that money back here because, they all tried to make Bernie sound like he was crazy, saying that we could have free state college for everybody. And then within a blink of the eye, the Democrats joined the Republicans to give $80 billion more in Pentagon spending. And that could have given us all free college. So when they say we can't afford it, they're just lying. And how do you feel about so are you going to go fight that Pentagon spending? Are you going to try and reduce it and invest that money back here at home?
No, absolutely. It's something that we need to show our priorities, and we need to reinvest in the United States. I mean, our infrastructure is just falling apart. And I know for a fact when I drive under bridges, looking up and seeing the rebar, the rust coming down the cracked concrete, or seeing a bridge collapse in Minnesota, and just the condition that things are in. And I mean, our families drive over these things every single day, and it's just, as a country, it shows us where our priorities aren't. And right now, it seems like the United States government is doing a lot more, with making more enemies than we are helping people that have traditionally been allied with us. And that's whether it comes up to play for trying to keep a North Korea in check, or honor an agreement that we signed with Iran that has been successful in keeping them from attaining a nuke.
Right.
So it's about keeping our word. It's about being a good citizen and showing where our priorities are. I bet if we didn't, drop as many bombs on other countries, we wouldn't have to watch our back so much. So
you think. So I could count on you, Randy, to go and actually speak for the people, because the people don't want more Pentagon spending. And if we spent that money, go ahead.
And absolutely, and that's one of the reasons I've been proud to be endorsed by Barbara Lee, who offered that amendment that Paul Ryan took away literally in the middle of the night, that gave Donald Trump a blank check to issue war. And also we've been endorsed by Center for a Livable World, which is very involved in making the place much more livable, obviously by their name.
So do you back Tulsi Gabbard's bill to stop funding terrorists now?
Yes.
That's fantastic, Randy. I got to tell you, you're surprising me with a lot of these answers. I haven't heard a Democrat, but you're a very straight talker right now. This is surprising. I've gotten nothing but mealy-mouthed answers to these questions when I ask other people. Now, the Democrats have now you're for single payer, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And you don't take money from fossil fuels, so do you oppose the pipelines that are underneath the country?
I do.
Okay, I
do. And here's the thing, is that Ironworkers Local 8, we built the textbook on how to erect wind turbines. And I mean, right now in California, ironworkers are leading the country in installing solar panels. But the thing with the wind turbines is, once Scott Walker came into office,
right,
he put a halt to that.
Yeah.
So, but that textbook is still being used to erect wind turbines throughout the country. And I mean, those are the kind of jobs that we look at. I had an opportunity when I was laid off to go work in Canada, where they're actually digging up for, I think it was Fort McMurray or something.
The tar sands?
But a union, yes. A union brother of mine was going up there, and he said, Randy, I know times are hard for you. Instead of getting the whatever, couple $100 a week for unemployment, you can get over $100,000 going up to Canada. They fly you up there, you work for a couple of weeks, long hours, then they fly you home, you spend a week with your family, and then they fly you back. I'm like, you know what? That's I don't feel comfortable making money that way. I'll stay at home and try to scrape by, hope something else comes up, just because personally. So I understand how how tradespeople are, and a big concern is just keeping a roof over their head for their families, making sure their health insurance. But I'm convinced that the way to go is to turn that corner and get into renewable sources of energy, because there's a coal-fired plant close by, and there's talk about the amount of people that are coming down with cancer as a result of living in proximity to it. The testing procedures aren't up to par. There are a lot of things that fossil fuels brings to us that is not good, and eventually it's going to run out. So let's be a leader again in the world. We just saw the SpaceX rocket take off, and everybody's looking at that like, once upon a time, that's how the United States was for everything. We were a leader. The rest of the world looked to us. And now we're grasping onto the old ways of how we powered ourselves and how we look at things. Just look at our train system, which is, you go to China or Japan, and it's like, wow, I wish I had that. We need to once again be a leader and let people look at us and prove that we're a lot better than what we have right now.
Well, listen, Randy, I know you have to go. I appreciate you making time for us. If I could just have one final question. I like to say on this show, I talk about how, we need to fight the bigger problem, which is neoliberalism, which is the system we're living under right now. And Bernie's idea is to become a democratic socialist country, which I'm totally for. And, I ask everybody, what do you call a system that takes the richest country the face of the earth has ever seen, the United States, and renders 63% of its population unable to afford a $1,000 emergency? I call that a failed system. Which is why Bernie Sanders said it sounds like you guys need a revolution. And we do need a revolution. We need to change the system fundamentally. And right now, the Democratic Party is wedded to Wall Street, and we need people like you to break the chains of the Democratic Party to Wall Street, because as long as it'll keep finding ways to screw over people like you and people like Bernie Sanders. And I hope you can do it. Do you think you'll be able to fight the system? I know you can't do it by yourself, but what do you say to that?
Right. No, absolutely. And I think that the way to do it is to be upfront, like we were and like other people are, where you say right off the bat, I'm not taking money from Wall Street. That's not, I'll take a lot of donations from, smaller donations from people, but I'm not relying on them. I'm not selling out to them. I don't want their money. They can keep it. And I think that's how we do it. We actually walk the walk. We don't just talk and say we don't want their money, but we actually don't accept it.
Okay, that's fantastic. Listen, Randy, I really appreciate it again. Thanks for taking time. I know you're busy. A lot of people want your time. Good luck in your campaign. Thanks for being a strong progressive. Thanks for standing up for workers and not their owners, okay? I really appreciate you doing that.
Thank you, and thanks for all you do as well.
Okay, bye, Randy.